You mentioned omega-6s before. And I feel like for people, I know I've been in this boat too, there's this love-hate relationship with them because in general, people these days are getting too many of them, but they are an essential fat, so we need some of them. How do we go about navigating that and making sure we're getting the right amount in a quality fat? Yeah, how do we navigate that?
Oh, it's really easy. Don't eat seed oils because they contain chemically separated, usually omega-6 fats, but even omega-6 fats that are expeller pressed, like expeller pressed canola oil, it's still damaged because omega-6 fats are unstable in light or heat. That's just how it works. Yes, technically your body needs omega-6 oils. Grass-fed beef has 1.6% omega-6 fat in it. You will not have a problem getting enough omega-6 fats. They're essential, but only in trace amounts. So your problem is, or your challenge is, how do I reduce my omega-6 consumption because it's everywhere? Knowing full well that if you eat animal products, you get enough omega-6s. And knowing full well that there's a case for eating a tablespoon of high quality olive oil a day for the other benefits it has, that it also contains omega-6. And there's a case for saying if you eat 1 or 2 walnuts a day, you're getting enough omega-6 there. Or there's a case that says if you eat an avocado or half an avocado, you got plenty of omega-6s to go over and above what your body needs to be essential. So you can drop the fear of not getting enough omega-6s. The only person who would say that would be someone who's probably very deep in trauma-oriented vegan philosophy. So no, you won't starve of omega-6 fats. Not possible, given that everything you eat has omega-6 fats in it, including even grass-fed butter has small amounts, and that's enough. So how do we go about getting rid of the bad ones? Well, you just don't eat processed seed oils. And I would even say don't eat processed avocado oil, although it's better than many. You should be doing unheated olive oil, a little bit. Doesn't have to be every day. You put it on your salad, things like that. You can eat, like I said, avocados, 1 or 2 walnuts, or better yet, macadamia nuts. Cashews have the best fat ratio of any so-called nut, even though cashews are actually a legume. Soaked and sprouted is always better for nuts because they do have phytic acid, but a tablespoon of nuts, you can probably handle that if you're taking your mineral supplements. Eating pancakes made with a pound of almond flour, that's where you're going to get into trouble for it. So as long as your diet is mineral sufficient and you're eating a small amount of soaked or sprouted nuts, you're fine. And heck, I'll eat a couple walnuts. I don't care. I can handle it. But if I was eating pounds of them like I was as an always hungry vegan, that's when I was doing the real damage. So that's the trick. Substitute animal fats for plant fats whenever you can. If it's deep fried at a restaurant, don't eat it. There's 3 exceptions to that rule. You can eat tallow fries. You can eat duck fat fries because tallow and duck fat, tallow is animal fat. Those are stable. That's what all of our fried food was made in until about 1960 when the seed oil industry came in. The third example is brand new. It's called cultured oil. It's from a company called Zero Acre Farms. And they have found a way to use fermentation, to use yeast fermentation, to create a very stable monounsaturated cooking oil that is actually safe to cook in with because it doesn't damage very easily at all. And has no flavor. It also costs half as much as canola oil. So restaurants love it. This is an oil that's going to restore a lot of the farmland in the US because we don't need corn and soybean oil for this stuff to exist. Also, I am an investor in the company since their first round. It's one of the most exciting companies on the planet right now for fixing our agricultural system. We can get higher quality oil that makes us healthier from plants if you can find a restaurant. There are now dozens of them using cultured oil. But in the rest of the time, don't eat fried stuff at restaurants unless it's fried in duck fat and tallow. And you'll know because they're going to tell you because that stuff's expensive. And a little asterisk, if it's fried in coconut or palm, a few restaurants do that. Those are okay. Otherwise, just don't do that. Don't eat salad dressings. Don't eat processed foods. And magically, your skin will look better. your testosterone levels will go up, your cell membranes will start to heal, and you'll like your life. And French fries just aren't worth it. If you're thinking about it, you could eat the French fries, you could have 3 shots of Jack Daniels, or you could smoke a cigarette, and each of them is going to do about the same harm. I promise you the cigarette and the Jack Daniels feel better than the French fries.
All right. Well, thank you for breaking all that down. I want to move into the other end of the spectrum on the omegas, the omega-3s. And you talk about something controversial in the book. Well, more than one thing, but the fact that fish may not be, well, you're saying it's not the health food everybody's saying it is. So talk about why this is the case.
When I wrote the Bulletproof Diet, I definitely recommended fish, and I've eaten a good amount of fish. But the problems are increasing, and they have been over the past 10 years very dramatically. And mercury was always a problem in fish. So I recommend the low mercury fish, things like sockeye salmon. And I still do it to a certain point because you need omega-3s, and omega-3s from fish are really good for you. Problem is microplastics have become a major, major issue in the world. So every time you eat a plant, magically, let's say that again. So every time you eat a fish, magically you are eating plastic. And that plastic got there because we put it in the environment. The microplastic beads in your facial scrub, even the fleece you're wearing right now, is a major contributor to tiny plastic particles that get into your cell membranes. They're even getting into plants. They're getting into our ecosystem. They don't break down. So unfortunately, fish has become so polluted that it's hard to say you should be a pescatarian. In fact, you will get sick as a pescatarian now, but you might not have gotten sick 20 years ago. Because to get enough protein from fish, you're going to be consuming a large amount of endocrine disruptors, a large amount of metals, and a large amount of plastic. So fish once or twice a week for the beneficial fats, fine. Fish as a primary protein source, not going to work anymore.
Okay, so given that, to make sure we're getting enough omega-3s for people that were relying on that as their source, you mentioned you can still do it a couple times a week, but what would you recommend to make up for that? Is it a certain supplement that's been filtered and tested, or how do we make sure we're getting enough omega-3s?
Well, there's 2 kinds of omega-3s that we're talking about in that conversation, and I should be super clear on that. One of them is called EPA, and the other one's called DHA. And these are the really precious ones that only really come from animals. There's an algae-based source for DHA that we can get now. But EPA is what adults need more of. It helps our brains work better. DHA is what babies and kids need more of. Now, adults need EPA and DHA. Kids just need more DHA and less EPA. So if you eat some fish, traditionally you would get this. So the biggest and best source has always been fish eggs. So tribes in all of the tribes we know about where they had fish, they would save and dry the fish eggs and give them to pregnant women because these were basically how they made sure their children would be healthier. And even during times of war, they would still trade eggs from the people who live by the ocean with the ones that, because we're fighting now, but we'll probably interbreed 5 generations from now. So here's some salmon eggs, like that kind of a thinking. So you can't get fish egg oil, and that's a clean source. And you can get molecularly distilled oil from fish as long as it doesn't taste fishy. There is a quality problem with fish oil right now. You go to a bulk store and you buy the cheap fish oil, it's probably going to be worse for you than not taking fish oil. So that's the conundrum. You want high quality fish oil that doesn't smell fishy, doesn't give you fish oil burps. That's a problem. So a high quality one, you're going to get clearer skin, clearer eyes. You're going to feel better and have a reduction in inflammation. There is no argument for mega dosing fish oils that I can find. That fish oils are also unstable. You need a little bit of those. But if you do what I used to do when I was trying to figure this out, is you take like 3 glugs out of the bottle of clean fish oil. That's probably too much unless you just had a recent brain injury or there's a specific use case for short period high dose. Otherwise, it's a couple grams a day.
Okay. Coming back to the fish, you mentioned the microplastics and you mentioned the heavy metals. For somebody that's been relying on fish as a source of omega-3s, a source of protein, and now they're thinking to themselves, I probably have a lot of these contaminants built up in my body. What can we do at that point to detox now that we're aware and we're making different choices? But because of the choices of the past, how do we detox that out of our system?
That's a challenge. I had heavy amounts of lead, mercury, moderate amounts of cadmium, and thallium, which is another less known toxic metal that comes from eating lots of kale. It concentrates in kale because we replace lead in gasoline with thallium that is much more toxic. So I had to go through this detox process myself in my late 20s. In order to get rid of those, you want to know which ones you have. If you've been eating a lot of fish, you almost certainly have mercury, you probably have lead, and may have cadmium. I would suggest working with a functional medicine doctor to get a picture of what's in there to know whether what you're doing to get rid of it works. The way we get rid of those heavy metals is similar to the way plants steal good metals from us. It's called chelation. And you use a variety of compounds that you take orally or intravenously or sometimes rectally. And these preferentially stick to mercury and they stick to lead so that you can then pee it out or poop it out. You also upregulate the detox systems in your liver and your kidneys with a variety of compounds. You can also take binders like activated charcoal or chlorella. But doing them in the right order is important because you could do what I did when I first started trying to deal with this myself before I realized that there were doctors who specialize in heavy metals. I just said, well, I'll take a bunch of that stuff. And if you free up heavy metals in your body and you can't excrete them, they recirculate, do more damage, and they stick in your brain. If you lose a ton of weight quickly, your body stores toxins, including metals, in your extra fat. So if you're a chubby pescatarian and you suddenly say, I'm going to learn how to lose weight really quickly, you're going to free up a ton of lead and mercury that's in your body, and it's probably going to give you brain fog. So as you're losing the weight, you take toxin binders and you take glutathione and things like that. So the short answer is, if you've been on a pescatarian diet and you accumulated heavy metals and PCBs as a result, you're going to want to see a doctor who specializes in that. If you're going to stay pescatarian, you want to make sure that when you eat fish, you take chlorella, which is a supplement made out of algae that sticks to mercury so that your body won't absorb it from the fish. That's what I do when I eat fish now. I take 20 or 30 little tiny green chlorella tablets, and I notice a difference the next day. Years ago, when I had a very advanced yoga practice, I would notice if I had sushi with tuna's high in mercury, the next day, I couldn't stand on one leg and balance with my eyes closed. I would just fall over. But if I didn't have sushi, I could stand and I wouldn't fall over. I was like, oh, wow, my daily balance is different based on this small amount of neurotoxin. So yeah, you can bind it. It's just work. And it's okay. No one's perfect. This isn't an alarm situation. I was doing something that I thought was good for me. Maybe I thought it was good for the planet, or I thought fish didn't matter as much as chickens in the overall hierarchy of life. Maybe it's not working.
If you enjoyed that clip, press here for the full episode. I'll see you over there.
Chicken's just bad from an ethical perspective, from the way it's raised, and from a health perspective. If you do these things, you will live longer and feel better and have less emotional reactivity because you're less stressed physiologically. And you need this.